Okay, so we're on to video number 3 for my sunny hat, which is this knit and crochet combination slouchy hat. And what we're going to do now is to finish off the knitted hat band to get onto the first piece of crochet. Now, first things first, what I have here is a small piece of the hat band done up. You can see here that stretches over 2 of the 5 points that the pattern requires. So you'll have a little bit more knitting to do now than I did for this, but the effect is the same. So we're going to carry on with this little piece here. So I have all my stitches at the end of my last repeat of my zigzag hat band and garter stitch knitting, and I'm going to cast off now on this piece. So the first thing we have to do to cast off our stitches is simply to slip your first stitch, as you have been doing. If you've been slipping, get that right, there you go. If you've been slipping purlwise, carry on slipping purlwise. If you've been slipping knitwise, carry on slipping knitwise. Either way, it'll be fine, and just be consistent essentially. And then we're going to knit one stitch, give everything a bit of a wiggle. I usually find that helps, just to stretch those stitches out a little bit. And then the loop that you, or the stitch that you slipped, pick that up with your needle and hopscotch it up, over and off the needle you've, or the stitch you've just knit. And we're going to do the same with the next one. Bit of a wiggle. Take the needle, the stitch that was there, pop up, over and off, like so. So as you're casting off, you're knitting on one stitch and then you're leapfrogging off. So you always end up back with one stitch on the end, and you get this lovely, suspiciously crochet looking V set here on the side of your work, or on the top of your work in this case. So you're going to cast off all those stitches. If this is a cast off you don't particularly like doing, by all means use any one you wish. Just remember, some of the more bulky casts off, if you are a knitter with preferences in that direction, remember that's going to give a little bit of extra width to your hat band. So you're best off using a cast off that isn't going to add a lot of fabric to something like this. So say for instance, Icelandic bind off wouldn't be the ideal for this particular situation here. Icelandic bind off, for the record, is basically a double crochet for those of you who are crocheters. There we go. And last one there, pop over and off, and we're down to one loop on our knitting needle currently. We've got a nice edge, because I've ensured that those stitches were a little bit loose as I was working, by the way. That's got a bit of stretch to it there on that side as well. If I had kept these tight, this would be a very mean, crunched up little piece of knitting here, but I've made sure that it's nice and cheerful and squishy as we work. So I get to say sayonara to my knitting needle and to my other knitting needle as well. And I get to say aloha to my 7mm crochet hook here. So this, for the record, is a size that is very common in Europe and around the world, not so common in the US. If you do need to substitute for a different size, my recommendation is to go up a little bit, but obviously check your tension, because you may be able to get away with a different hook size regardless. You may actually be okay on a 6.5, which is a lot more common in the US than 7mm. If it turns out that you do need a 7mm, I'm going to put links in the description of this video to a few different companies that do them in the US and around the world, so you won't have to wait, or you won't have to fudge as you're working. So I have my 7mm here, and I have put the last loop of my knitted bind off on, and now I'm just simply going to transition into crocheting like it's just nothing in the world. So on our band here, we are going to crochet along the jagged edge as we go here. I'm going to use what's called a half treble in UK parlance and what's called a half double in US parlance. And to do that, essentially what we're going to do is to create one chain stitch, like so. Then the half treble or half double, I'm going to yarn over like so, and then I'm going to examine my work. And the whole point of crochet is that you need to find an anchor point in the fabric you're making. Your stitches are on your hook, but your hook determines where your stitch is going to go. And on this particular pattern, I'm going to be working each of my crochet stitches into one of the garter stitch ridges as we go. You can see there, if I pull everything apart, there's a very definite ridge and furrow going on. So as long as you make sure that you have one crochet stitch into each of those ridges, then you're good to go. Obviously, we're going to be crocheting on the edge of the ridges here. So I like finding these little holes right underneath the top of my work here. And so I'm going to go into my first one right there. So hook in, yarn over, draw the yarn over through. So I've got 3 loops on my hook. And then I go yarn over and I pull this yarn over through everything else that's on the hook. So all 3 of these loops, all 6 strands are going to say goodbye in one go. And that's my first half treble done. Next one along, yarn over, I find the next ridge, find the next hole in here, yarn over, draw through, so I have 3. And I go yarn over, and this one goes through everything again. So straight through all of them like so. So you're going to do this for the length of your 5 points on your hat band, essentially, until you have 70, if you're doing the medium-sized hat, 70 stitches along the edge of your work. For the record, if you can't find that little hole I'm working into, because I know knitting can be a little bit different on different people's edges, just as long as you make sure that where you go into the edge is consistent and you've got more than 1 strand of yarn, really, just to make sure that you have a bit of strength to it. As long as it's consistent, then it is a design feature rather than a mistake or a flaw. So don't worry about that so much. As long as your mistakes are consistent, they are regional styles as far as I say. So here we go. We'll do a few more half trebles just to be sure. So go yarn over into the next ridge, yarn over, pull through, so you've got 3, yarn over, pull through 3, like so. And you can see on the top of your work, for those of you unfamiliar with crochet, that looks like a knitted bind off there, and that's what we're going to be crocheting into for our next row along. Simple as that.